Hello, this is Professor Angelia with part 12 of Works of Hearts, Child Development and Psychology class. Last time we left off on suggestions for easing the transition between home and school. So that was for when you're sending your little ones off to school. If you're like me, you hate it, you're going to cry every time the first day comes around for one of them to go to school. So we're going to start now on extended year and traditional school trends. The raw scores are traditional schools are still prevalent with like 1.1 thousand of schools of the U.S. And I don't know how they figured their percentage. Their percentage seems wonky to me. And then just a little bit less than that is extended year schools. Now here in my state, we don't have extended year schools yet, but they're talking about that. Mathematics achievement trend, raw scores, and grade equivalents for extended and traditional groups. So according to those groups, the extended year students do better in math. And I can believe that's true because I remember when I was in like 5th grade and went to 6th, I forgot all that stuff that we learned in math. So, I had to restart. Reading achievement trends and scores and grade equivalents in the extended year traditional groups. The extended year students did better also. And general knowledge achievement trends with raw scores and grade equivalent extended year and traditional groups. The extended year students did almost twice as good as the traditional year students. So if you're looking at someone from Kentucky schools, might be something to note. But the source for that was Fraser and Morrison in 1998. The concrete operational stage. In the stage of concrete operations, children can deal with information that is based on something they can see or imagine. They can mentally operate on objects but cannot deal with distractions. We're going to talk about the characteristic, the explanation, and the example. So, conservation. Children in this stage understand that things remain the same despite changes in appearance. A child develops the ability to understand that a ball of clay can change shape and still contain the same amount of clay. Ability to classify. Students can place objects in various categories. Elementary school students can now group different animals as mammals. Ability to seriate. Students can place things in size order. Children can arrange a series of sticks in terms of length or weight. Ability to reverse operations. Students can follow a process from beginning to end and then back again. The teacher rolls a ball of clay into a long, worm-like structure. A child in this stage can mentally recreate the ball of clay. Inability to use abstractions. Students cannot deal with abstract material, such as ideas and statements not tied to something observable or imaginable. Children may find political cartoons and proverbs puzzling because they cannot understand their abstract meaning. That takes higher thinking, which they'll get later on. Parenting accidents in the school-age child. And that should be preventing. Yeah, it's one of them days for me. We're going to talk about the accident and the prevention measure. Motor vehicle accidents. Encourage children to use seat belts in the car. Role model their use, because children live what they learn. Teach street crossing safety. Stress that streets are no place for roughhousing, pushing, or shoving. And I almost had an accident out here on Preston Highway because students standing at the bus stop decided it would be funny to shove a kid out into the road. Nothing funny about that, guys. Teach bicycle safety, including advice not to take passengers on a bicycle and to use a helmet. And if anyone who's listening to this knows me, you know that my sister was killed in a bicycle accident. So that's something I always was on my kids about, to ride safely when they were younger. I made them wear a helmet. Some of them worried when they got older and they didn't choose to do that, and that worried me to death, but that was on them, you know. Teach parking lot and school bus safety. Do not walk behind parked cars, and wait for the crossing guard, etc. In the community, teach to avoid areas especially unsafe, such as train yards, grain silos, back alleys. Teach not to go with strangers. Parents can establish a code word with the child. A child does not leave the school or anywhere else with anyone who does not know the word. And that is a good idea because, you know, sometimes people hang around with you to have access to your kids. I had a man that was coming, you know, to my yard sales. And then he decided he wanted to take my son for a ride in the car one day. And I was like, no, that's not happening. Oh, come on, Mom. We're just going to go down here to the store and, you know, I'll get him a drink or something. No, that's not happening. I know better. I was molested as a child, so I know better. That's not happening in my family. You know, so that's something that is a good idea. It can be like a pet's name. It can be a word you agree upon. But if the person says, your mommy or daddy told me to pick you up, if they don't know the code word, tell the kid they do not go with them if they don't know this word. I would tell them this word. That's important to remember. Teach them to say no to anyone who touches them whom they do not wish to do so. And that's where, you know, my parents failed me there. I was told that you're supposed to listen to adults no matter what they tell you to do. You better do it. Because if we hear that you don't do it, we're going to beat your ass. So they set me up, you know. Including family members. Most sexual abuse is by a family member, not a stranger. So remember that. Think about that. Think about who you're leaving your kids with. Just because they're a family member doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you can trust them. If you grew up feeling uneasy about someone, maybe you shouldn't leave your kids with them. Burns. Teach safety with candles, matches, campfires. Fire is not fun. Teach safety with beginning cooking skills. Remember to include microwave oven safety, such as closing the door firmly before turning on the oven. Not using metal containers. Teach not to climb power poles. Excuse me. And there was an incident in the old neighborhood where I used to live where a guy actually was up on the power pole and fell and hit the wire and got electrocuted. So that is also something that's important because kids, you know, they'll dare each other to do stuff and then they'll do it to prove they're, you know, not chicken, and then bad things can happen. Falls. Teach that roughhousing on fences, climbing on roofs, etc. is hazardous. And my son got hurt on a cow gate, so those are hazardous too. Teach skateboard safety. Sports injuries. Wearing appropriate equipment for sports, face masks for hockey, knee braces for football, helmets for baseball, and your shin guards for soccer. This is not babyish, but smart. Teach not to play to a point of exhaustion or in a sport beyond their physical capability. Pitching baseball or ballet on toes for a grade school child. Teach to use trampolines only with adult supervision to avoid serious neck injury. Drowning. Children should learn how to swim. And that dares and roughhousing when diving or swimming are not appropriate. Teach not to swim beyond limits of capabilities. And you might want to mention to them not to go swimming when they're drunk. My father ended up with a broken neck. Drugs. Teach to avoid all recreational drugs and to take prescription medicine only as directed. Firearms. Teach safe firearm use. Parents should keep firearms in locked cabinets with bullets separate from the gun. And I know some people want to argue with that, saying, oh, I wouldn't be able to get to it in time. Well, if you got a lock on your bedroom door, you can lock it and then get it ready. And if you don't, maybe you should put a lock on your bedroom door. But so many children are killed every year. Their brother or sister or their little cousin or whatever, they kill each other. And it's an accident, and you know that child's going to feel horrible about that for the rest of their life. But they're playing with a gun, and it happens. So keep those guns out of children's reach, please. And general. Teach school agers to keep adults informed as to where they are and what they are doing. That's something my parents did, and that's something I did. Where are you going? Who are you going to be with? Give me a phone number. Be aware that the frequency of accidents increases when parents are under stress and therefore less attentive. Special precautions must be taken at these times. I might have to pause this for a minute because someone's being rude and ringing my phone. And they wanted nothing, as I figured. Be aware that the frequency of the accidents, okay, we covered that. Some children are more active, curious, and impulsive, and therefore more vulnerable to accidents than others, especially if they have like ADD or ADHD. They're not in control of that impulsiveness, and they're not really, let's see, how do you put this? They're not really aware of their body in the surroundings of the environment that they're in, and so they, do things that they shouldn't be doing. Service components of the school of the 21st century. This is what they had hoped for. We're not quite there yet. We're getting there. Child daycare components. A school-based year-round child daycare for children ages 3 to 5. Most schools do not have that. School-based before and after school and vacation care for children 5 to 12. Some schools do have that. Family support and outreach components. Home visiting by trained parent educators. Now, one of my son's elementary schools did have that. Support and training to family child care providers. And they didn't have that. And I offered this program to the schools. Some of them were interested, others were not interested. But I think that's, parenting skills is important. Then I think every parent should have to take parenting classes before they even have the kid. While they're pregnant, they should have to take them. Information and referral. Most places do have, information and referral sources. Nutrition programs and education. Most schools do have that. Comprehensive preventive health care. Most schools do not have that. Occasionally, when things were going on, nurses would come to the school. Unfortunately, these people are usually volunteers. A lot of them aren't even nurses. They're just volunteers for the program. And we had several false positive incidences where I'd take the kid to the doctor. The doctor would say, no, who told you that? And I'd be like, this thing here from the school. So they're like, no. And then, of course, you have to get that no from the doctor to give back to the school to prove that, you are taking care of your child. Additional services that may be indicated by the needs assessment. Social services. There's usually a counselor at schools, and they can refer you out if that need be. Teen pregnancy prevention. High schools have this usually. Adult and family literacy. They had this at my children's elementary school. And me and my mom used to go to these events and get books and read with the kids. It was kind of fun. On-site prenatal services. Most schools do not have this. Outreach to community child daycare providers. Most schools do not have this. And intergenerational programs. Most schools have like a grandparents' day, and that's about it. So this is what they really want schools to have. We're not quite there yet. Multiple classification. Which of the choices on these fits the best? And this is, for students, they would have a group of shapes, like say a square, a little square, and a circle. And the student would have to put these, write them down. They have to justify their choice, state whether one or the other picture might as well be the answer, or if there's a better choice. And they had to notice the choices along 2 or more dimensions. And this is something they work on kids with in elementary school to teach them, about serration and sizes and things like that. Because when they're very young, like I said, you roll the ball of clay into a long snake, they think that one has more clay because it's longer. Or if you have 2 glasses of water, one's fatter, and the water looks lower, and the other one's taller and the water looks higher. Even if there's more water in the short one, they're going to say there's more water in the tall one because the water level is higher. So they have to teach them, that even though something looks different, it can still be exactly the same. That's, something that people have to learn to understand. Through a child's eyes. Okay, and what they did was they built a straight road with some track, and they built a curvy road with some track, toy track. And then they asked students to think which road is longer than the other. And they start this with preschool students because they'll always say the longer looking road, the straight road, is longer, even if the curvy road has more pieces of track. And what they'll do is they'll break it down and count them with them. So they see that, just because something looks, longer to them, it might not be really true, because they want people to start thinking, everything isn't always how it appears to be. Developmental changes and the percentage of speaker turns occurring in brief, medium, and long dialogues. And this is, talking with the kids. At the age of 2, there's only about, 10 words happening. By 5th grade, there's a little bit more than that. By grade 9, there's only about 20 words going on. By age 12, there's, it drops a little bit. And by the time they're adult, it keeps a certain level. So, the longer dialogues, of course, are when you're an adult. Excuse me. And the less, of course, when you're about 2, because you don't have the verbiage, to express yourself as you will when you're an adult. So, if your kid's only using about, a couple words a sentence when they're 2, that's normal. Estimated vocabulary size at grades 1, 3, and 5. At grade 1, they have about 10,000 words. By grade 3, they have about 20,000 words. By grade 5, they have about 40,000 words. Now, that's average. Your child might have more, your child might have less. Everybody's different. The source for that is Hoff, Ginsberg, 97, from Vocabulary Development and Morphological Analysis by J.M. Anglin, Society for Research in Child Development. 58, serial number 238, copyright 1993. The Society for Research in Child Development, Incorporated, reprinted by permission. Growth in middle childhood. Boys are taller at the beginning of this period of development, but girls become taller at about age 10. And they experience their pre-pubertal growth spurt about 2 years earlier than boys. So by age 6, boys are still taller and heavier. By age 7, boys are still taller and heavier. By age 8, boys are still taller and heavier. By age 9, they're about even, about 4th grade. Age 10, girls are now taller and heavier. Age 11, girls are now taller and heavier. By age 12, girls are taller and heavier, and most girls start menstruation around the age of 12. Weight gain in middle childhood. Boys are heavier than girls until about age 8 or 9, when girls weigh more for a few years. Like I said, once you get to about age 14, then the guys start catching up and passing us up. I thought I was going to be tall because I was always tall as a kid. Then I got to be 12, got to 5'2", never grew another inch. So the guys pass us up. Student achievement. Reading. 28% of fourth graders read at a proficient or advanced level on the National Assessment of Educational Progress reading exam. So think about that. That's only 28%. Only 28% of our kids read where they should be reading. 31% of fourth graders read at a basic level. So again, only 31% of our kids are reading at the level that they're supposed to be reading at in fourth grade. 41% of students read below the basic level. Math. And again, this is going to, you wonder why America is not keeping up with some of the other countries? This is why. Our education is lacking. 80% of fourth graders do math at a proficient or advanced level. That's only 18% of fourth graders can do math at the proficient level. 41% of fourth graders achieve at a basic level. So they're, in the rudimentaries. 41% of students score below basic level. Again, why are we behind in science and technology? Because 41% of students can score below the basic level. And then people talk about wanting to cut educational budgets. Is that a good choice for our country? No. Rating of public schools. Students are often given the grades A, B, C, D, and fail to denote the quality of their work. Suppose the public schools themselves in this community, or your community, were graded in the same way. What grade would you give to public schools in your area? And the national totals, 46% of people gave their school an A or B. 10% would give them an A, 36% would give them a B, 31% would give them a C, 9% would give them a D, and 5% would fail them. So these numbers go by, the national average. People who didn't have children in school actually gave them better grades. People who did have children in public school gave them worse grades. And people who were non-public school parents actually did also grade them better, assuming that public school was doing the job they're supposed to be doing. How about the public schools in the nation as a whole? The ones who gave them the best rating were non-public school parents, because they assumed that schools are supposed to be doing what they're doing. And the ones who gave them the worst rating were public school parents. So that tells you the public school parents know schools aren't doing what they need to be doing. What do you think are the biggest problems with which the public schools in this community and your community must deal with? Okay. Fighting or violence in gangs was the number one thing. Lack of discipline and more control was number 2. Lack of financial support, funding, or money was number 3. Use of drugs, number 4. Overcrowded schools, number 5. Concern about standards and quality of education, number 6. Difficulty getting good teachers and quality teachers, number 7. Pupils' lack of interest or poor attitudes and truancy, number 8. And I'm sure that was probably put in there by the teachers and the administrators of the school. And then some people said they wouldn't improve anything. And of course, that's down at like the 3% of people. And then other people didn't know what they wanted to say. Students aged 6 to 21 served under IDEA, that's the Individual Disability Education Act, Part B 95, through now by disability. The highest number of students who have disabilities were specific learning disabilities. Now, I had 2 students who fit into that category. Speech or language impairments, mental retardation, serious emotional disturbance, multiple disabilities, hearing impairments, orthopedic impairments, other health impairments, visual impairments, autism, deaf and blindness, and traumatic brain injury. And a lot of programs for these students are really good. I had some really good teachers. And then also I had a couple really bad teachers who said they do not like ECE students, exceptional child education, in their classroom. And they allow other students to pick on them and call them names. So this is something, people need to be aware of, and they need to teach their children that, you're not supposed to make fun of or be mean to someone just because they're different, especially, if they have a disability. And some adults still need to learn that too. The formal operations stage. In the stage of formal operations, adolescents develop the ability to deal with abstract information and theoretical propositions. They can formulate and test hypotheses in a scientific manner. And we're going to talk about the characteristics, the explanation, and the example. Combinational logic. The ability to find all the possible alternatives. When asked what the president could have done in a certain situation, a teenager will produce a great many alternatives. Some real, some impractical. If given 5 jars of colorless liquid and told that some combination will yield a yellow liquid, an adolescent will use an efficient and effective strategy that will produce all possible alternatives. Separating the real from the possible. The ability to separate oneself from the real world and consider different possibilities. The ability to accept propositions that are contrary to reality. A teenager can imagine other realities, other lifestyles, and think about what could be rather than what is. A teenager can readily discuss propositions such as, what if all human beings were green? Using abstractions. The ability to deal with material that is not observable. An adolescent understands higher level concepts such as democracy and liberty, as well as the abstract meaning in Proverbs. Hypothetical deductive reasoning. And most people don't develop that until they're older, in their teens or in their early 20s. Some people never do. The ability to form hypotheses and use scientific logic. A teenager uses deductive logic to test a hypothesis. Growth during adolescence. By age 12, again, we noted that girls are heavier and taller than boys. Age 13, they catch up. By age 14, they pass us up. And then, of course, 15, 16, 17, and 18, girls relatively stay the same from age 13 on. There's very little growth. But boys shoot up at age 14 and get on average 2 inches taller than the girls by age 18. Changes in weight during adolescence. Again, we talked about that same thing. The boys pass us up, at age 14 and keep on going. And they generally outweigh us by 30 pounds. Daily participation in physical ed by high school students. Okay? And this goes down, actually, and that's because so many schools have quit PE. In 1991, 50% of students were in PE. By 93, less than 40%, And by 95, less than 30% of schools still had PE, which I think is a shame. Here, it's mandatory and we do have it, but all schools don't. So, you wonder why people in general are getting bigger, because they're not doing any physical exercise. Trends in development. Proportion of students in grades 9 to 12 who participate in daily school physical education. Fewer students receive daily physical education today. And the percentage is in 91, 42%. In 95, it went down to 25%. And then they started to realize this is a problem in schools. So now it's up to 50%. So we need to get the other half of the schools, to get the kids into physical education. So they realize that's something important. That if you just sit on the couch all the time, your body's going to rot. Your body's going to die because you're not, strengthening your muscles. Kids items endorsed by middle school students. Comparison by gender. Okay, and we're going to talk about the percentages. And these are reported by students. Wanting to lose weight. 55% of the girls and 28% of the boys. So clearly there's some, self-image issues with girls still. They felt they were fat. 54% of the girls and 27% of the boys. They were afraid to gain weight. 32% of the girls and 13% of the boys. They had dieted. 42% of the girls and 19% of the boys. So at the young age when they shouldn't be doing that, 42% of your girls are going on diets because they feel they're too big. Fasted, and not for religious reasons, 11% of girls and 6% of boys. Vomited, 5% of girls and 3% of boys. Used diet pills, 3% of girls and 1% of boys. Used diuretics, 2% of girls, 1% of boys. Used laxatives, 2% of girls, 1% of boys. Binged, 6% of girls and 26% of boys, because boys aren't afraid to pig out. They're okay with it, But unfortunately, girls will do it, and then they'll feel like they have to purge, so then they'll, start throwing up. And then that can lead, to anorexia, bulimia, and problems with that. So we need to tell our girls that you're okay how you are, that, you're not too fat. You'll outgrow the baby fat, teach them how to be healthy. That's more important on whether they, have an inch too much, over the belt or on the booty, teach them to be healthy and, not criticize them for gaining weight. The prevalence of overweight in adolescents. Because of lack of exercise, the percentage of overweight adolescents has increased. In 1976, it was 15%. 1995, it was 24%. In 2000, it was 15% because they realized that was a thing, and so they started trying a little harder. So that is it for today. That was our bell you heard. I hope you found this educational or just informational. And I will leave the link for the GoFundMe in the description. And hopefully, if you like this, you can help me keep doing these. Because since I had to retire because of my health, this is all I'm doing now. So until next time.